Morning, it's Rob, and I'm back with another KYJ. We're doing the alphabet series, remember? So today is letter I. So our first jargony I word, one of my favourites, it's idiopathic. Idiopathic. Idiopathic is like a fancy medical way of saying we don't know. We don't have an answer. We've got no clue. That's what idiopathic means. You'll see it on the front of some diagnoses, like idiopathic intracranial hypertension, or yeah. So that's an example. Funny story. I used to do first aid. Well, I still do, but we were doing first aid at a big music festival, and this young fella came in and he was covered in itch. He was itchy. He'd been staying in a tent, and I don't know, could possibly have something in the grass he was allergic to, but he didn't have any obvious rash. He was just itchy. And we all think, all the crew that were in the first aid tent, were all doctors and nurses. It wasn't like a little first aid tent. It was a big kind of medical tent at this facility, at this festival. And this fella comes in and he says, I'm just really, really itchy. Anyway, he'd been in the mosh pit, and we just thought he got sweaty and he got hot, and, you get itchy. Anyhow, we said, look, there's not much that we can do for you. Have some water, maybe go and have a cold shower, and before you go back to your campsite, and you should be right. And he promptly sat up and he said, well, I'm not going anywhere until I know what I've got. I need a diagnosis in case I have to take it to my doctor. So we had a little huddle, and then we came up with idiopathic pruritus. Now, pruritus just means you're itchy, and idiopathic means we don't know why. So we said, look, we've had a conference with the doctor and the other team, and we're fairly sure that you've got idiopathic pruritus. We wrote that down on a piece of paper for him so he could take it to his doctor. He said, oh, okay, all right, thank you. Idiopathic just means we don't know. Our next word is a difficult one to pronounce. It's intersusception. Intertusception. It's a difficult word to say. Intertusception, I think I nailed it, is it's a potentially fatal condition that can happen in children, and it's when the bowel telescopes into itself. So when the bowel undergoes its normal peristalsis, as you're digesting food, and peristaltic action takes place, occasionally the bowel in a child may sort of pull into itself, it collapses back into itself, almost like it's trying to turn itself inside out in certain portions along its length. And when this happens, it causes intense pain, abdominal discomfort and pain. The child screams. It can be really spasmodic. It can sort of come and go every 15 or 20 minutes or so, particularly after eating. And it can be life-threatening. Intersusception. Hard to say, easier to spell. Our next word is iatrogenic. Iatrogenic. An iatrogenic condition is one that we do know the cause of. Iatrogenic is something that we've caused, an iatrogenic condition. So there's lots and lots of examples, but just a quick one off the top of my head. Let's say we're putting in an intravenous cannula, and we pop the vein, and the patient got a hematoma, or the patient's had a cannula in for a while and it started to infiltrate, it started to tissue and become inflamed, and they've developed a phlebitis in that vein. That would be iatrogenic. So it relates to a medical procedure that has been performed, or a medication that's been given to the patient where harm has occurred. Iatrogenic. What about inferior? Now, in common conversation, we use the word inferior to mean lower than or beneath than. Somebody is inferior to you, or inferior means underneath. Well, it sort of means the same in Latin and medicine. Inferior refers to a structure that's underneath something else, or the bottom of a structure, the the lowest portion of that structure. So a couple of examples from the cardiac world are if somebody was to have an inferior myocardial infarction, then that would mean that it's the sort of the apex of the heart, that very, very bottom portion of the heart that has become injured, inferior. We have a couple of very, very large veins that bring blood back to the right heart, and that right heart blood vessel is called the vena cava, and there's a vena cava that comes up from the bottom of the body, bringing blood sort of from the chest down back to the right heart. And the vena cava also brings blood down from sort of the head and the arms and the shoulders down to the heart. Well, those two branches, the one coming from the top is called the superior vena cava, the one coming from the bottom is the inferior vena cava. So inferior refers to a relative point. You could say that the kidney is inferior to the adrenal gland, as an example. Inferior means underneath or below. I know it's controversial, but let's talk about the I word, ivermectin. I'm going to go there. Ivermectin is a very commonly used drug. It's not just horse worming tablets, but ivermectin's actually used quite commonly in human beings, particularly those that are living in an environment where there is a large amount of parasitic infestation. So if you think of a community that has a lot of scabies, as an example, scabies and worms, ivermectin is often used to dose an individual or their community, their family, to be able to ward off or prevent parasitic infestation. Ivermectin, great drug for the right reasons. Okay, let's do one more. And this one comes from one of our users who has posted a few I words. So I wanted to use some of our users' I words, some of our followers' I words. So this one is ichthyosis. Ichthyosis. Now, ichthyosis is a skin condition. It causes scaly skin. And the skin resembles fine fish scales. And when you stop and look at the word, ichthys is Latin for fish. So ichthyosis, condition of being a fish, or having skin like a fish. Ichthyosis, a skin condition where the skin becomes very dry and scaly. Interestingly, there's we kind of use that fish word, ictus, in medicine as well. We use it when somebody is fitting. They're in a state of icterus, flipping around like a fish. And when they've stopped having a fit, stopped their convulsion, then we would say that period after the seizure has finished, that's the post-ictal phase, meaning after they've been flipping around like a fish. Ichthyosis was the word. I think that's enough I words for one day. See you tomorrow when we do J. Have a great day, people.